Welcome, everyone. I'm Rochelle Diamond. I'm on our employee experience team, and I run our LinkedIn speaker series. I always like to start by reminding everyone why we're here, why we have this series. Our goal is to bring innovative thinkers and inspiring ideas to all of you, to our employees and to our members, to make you more productive and successful. And we've recorded all these. We put them all online. You can see them all past speakers at speakers.linkedin.com. And as you may know, we also have a channel on iTunes where you can download it as a podcast. So on to our event for today. We're very lucky to have a very innovative thinker here with us, Jerry Kaplan. He is a widely known serial entrepreneur, and he has started 4 Silicon Valley startups. One of them was a unicorn. And he currently teaches the social and economic impact of artificial intelligence at Stanford. He has his PhD in artificial intelligence from the University of Pennsylvania and a BA in history and philosophy of science from University of Chicago. His most recent book is one that you all have in front of you, Humans Need Not Apply, A Guide to Wealth and Work in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. And those are going to be the themes that he's going to discuss with us today. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome up Jerry Kaplan. Hi, Jerry.
Thanks, Rochelle.
Yeah. So Jerry has been so kind to indulge us in our LinkedIn tradition of when we introduce someone new to the company that he's going to share with us something that's not on his LinkedIn profile and then also demonstrate a special skill or talent. So first of all, Jerry, do you want to tell us a story that is not on your LinkedIn profile?
Well, I'm embarrassed to say that when I was about 15 years old, probably, I lived in New York, and I was asked to participate in a panel for 17 magazine, and they wrote an article on what boys look for in girls.
That's excellent.
Did it work out for you?
Not at all.
And actually, media productions team, can we pull up that article? There's the magazine, and I think we have a shot of the article as well, with Jerry looking very dapper in the back there. I particularly like, well, there's one quote about how you related dating to like mathematical theory. Mathematical theory is involved in how to choose someone to date. So.
I don't recall.
Yeah. But in speaking of dating, there's another story that we had talked about. I think that we'd be remiss not to share with everyone that's also not on your LinkedIn profile. Mm-hmm. Would you like to share about a special double date you had?
Well, I happened to mention to Rochelle, and of course she insisted on embarrassing me with this. I actually once went on a double date with Bill Gates. So that was many years ago.
How was the date? Was it good for both?
Well,
and there's a little shot of Bill and Jerry.
So you guys were on a date?
Yeah. No, we were not
on a double date with other. No,
that's not the date. No. Bill had a friend at the time. Well, it's still a friend, I'm sure. Ann Winblad. Maybe some of you know her. And I was seeing somebody. I don't remember. And we actually went out to dinner at one point. So.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Okay.
And if some of you were here earlier, Jerry gave a preview of his special talent. He's going to give us a little bit more of an example of what his special talent is right now.
Well, if you can't guess, I'll give you a 30-second lecture on jazz piano. How many of you have studied how to play an instrument? Okay, just about everybody. Playing jazz piano is a completely different experience than what you learn when you learn to play an instrument. When you learn to play an instrument, as Rochelle did, you reproduce. The idea is to reproduce as accurately as possible the intent of the composer. When you play jazz piano, you're actually creating music at the time. And it's supposed to be different every time, different harmony. It's a completely different experience. And to me, it's the quintessential ephemeral expression of the human spirit. And it's in contrast to the kinds of work that I do normally with machines and robots. And she asked me if I would do that. Now, the problem with this is, of course, I've never played, I think this is literally true, I've never played for an audience that wasn't drunk. And we can fix it. There's some beer in the little fridge over here. And the other thing is that I've never played at this hour of the morning, and I've never played standing up. But she asked me to do a little bit. So I don't know, we'll see.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will be having a concert after the speaker series here.
Don't forget to tip your waitress.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for indulging us in all of that. It was amazing.
Thank you.
You can, just a reminder for everyone, you can share the content of this talk. Our hashtag is InSpeaker, and Twitter handle is at Jerry_Kaplan. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jerry.
Okay. The cool thing about jazz piano also is, this is maybe a little hard to believe, but you actually play with a completely different part of your brain than you talk or interact with. And I could actually give this talk while I'm playing. We were just talking, and, I could just keep playing. So it's kind of weird. It's almost automatic. And as the player, you're listening as much as you are generating it. It's like almost like you don't know what you're doing. I have no idea what I played. That's sort of true. Okay. Oh, they're going to take this away? Oh. You got another gig, huh? Got to get off to your night gig. Okay. Today I want to talk about artificial intelligence. How many people here are engineers? Okay. Now, what I have to say may be a little bit surprising, because I have a very different view of the field than is typical. The common wisdom about artificial intelligence is that we're building increasingly intelligent machines that may ultimately surpass human capabilities, steal our jobs, and possibly even escape human control and take over the world. I want to present the case to you today that this narrative is both misguided and it's counterproductive. In fact, a far more appropriate framing, which is really better supported by actual historical and current events, is that AI is simply a natural expansion of long-standing efforts to automate tasks. And this dates back at least to the start of the Industrial Revolution. Now, then I want to talk about the consequences of rethinking the field from this very different perspective. So, what is artificial intelligence really? Can machines really think? I'm sorry to tell you that after a lifetime of work in the field and a great deal of reflection on this question, my reluctant and disappointing answer is simple: no. At very best, they don't think the way that people think. And it's little more than an analogy to say that they think at all. Machines are not people. And there's simply no persuasive evidence that they're on the path to becoming generally intelligent, sentient beings, despite what we all see in the movies. But wait a minute, you might say. Can't they solve all sorts of complex reasoning and perception problems? Sure. They can perform tasks that humans solve using intelligence. But that doesn't mean the machines are intelligent. It merely means that many tasks that we thought required general intelligence, in fact, are subject to solution by other more mechanical means. Let me run through some classic examples. Now, for decades, the archetypal test of the coming of age of AI was whether a machine could ever beat the world's chess champion. For a very long time, chess was considered to be the quintessential demonstration of human intelligence. Surely, when a computer was a world chess champion, AI would have arrived. Well, it happened in 1997 when IBM's Deep Blue beat the then world champion, Garry Kasparov, and lots of media ink was spilled, lamenting the arrival of super intelligent machines. And there was all kinds of hand-wringing over what this meant for the future of mankind. But the truth is it meant nothing, other than that you could do a lot of clever programming and use the increasing speed of computers to play chess. The techniques that they used have application to similar classes of problems, but they hardly proved to be the harbingers of the robot apocalypse, as people were warning. Okay, so then people said, sure, computers can play chess. That's a limited, well-defined domain, but they'll never be able to drive a car. That requires a broad understanding of the real world, the ability to make split-second judgments in chaotic circumstances, and it requires common sense. Well, particularly here in Mountain View, you know, this bulwark of human supremacy was breached in 2004 with the DARPA Grand Challenge for Autonomous Vehicles. You see them probably running up and down the street right here all the time. And yet, the self-driving cars do just that. They drive cars. They don't build houses. They don't cook meals. They don't make beds. Now, we speak of autonomous vehicles. But what that means to an engineer and what it means to the general public are two very different things. The public discourse is dangerously disconnected from the academic discourse on the subject of artificial intelligence. To an engineer, it means that data from sensors can be synthesized and analyzed to formulate control instructions that are sent to effectors like brakes and steering. But to the general public, it means that the car is looking around, that it's figuring out what it's seeing, and that it's deciding what it's going to do next. Now, these two descriptions are fundamentally different. Anybody here know Brad Templeton, since he's just up the street? Nobody? Okay. At Singularity University, which is, he likes to say, we don't believe in singularity and it's not a university. Now, Brad Templeton once said, your car will be truly autonomous when you instruct it to take you to the office and it decides to go to the beach instead. Okay, so computers can play chess and computers can drive cars. Then people said, but they could never play Jeopardy. That requires too much world knowledge, understanding metaphors, and clever wordplay. Well, thanks again to the ingenious people at IBM, this hurdle has also been cleared. As you probably know, IBM's Watson system beat Ken Jennings, who was the world's Jeopardy champion in 2011. Now, what is Watson? The reality is it's a collection of facts and figures encoded into cleverly organized modules that can quickly and accurately answer various types of common Jeopardy questions. Now, Watson's main advantage, you may not know, over the human contestants was that it could ring in before they could when it estimated a high likelihood that it had a correct answer. It's a remarkable and very sophisticated knowledge-based retrieval and inference system that was honed, at least at that particular time, to that specific problem set. Okay, so maybe Watson isn't the holy grail. But what about machine learning systems? How many of you are doing work in machine learning? Okay. I love it when I can offend the entire audience at once. So I lost my train of thought. Let's get the keyboard back up here. Do a little musical break while we're talking. What about machine learning systems? Aren't they more like human intelligence? Well, the latest product of the AI hype factory is the recent victory of Google's DeepMind machine learning program over Lee Sedol, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, who is the world champion Go player. But for those of you who were in grade school at the time, I can assure you this is a replay of the same lame press coverage that we saw when Deep Blue beat Kasparov. Now, DeepMind is a terrific technical achievement, make Make no mistake about that. But what it really demonstrates is that we can use computers to extract very complex patterns from extremely large volumes of data. It doesn't mean that the machines are getting smarter or that they think like people. It's a different way to tackle that same kind of problem. Now, here's what the problem is. Without a deep understanding of how these systems work, and with humans as the only available exemplars with which to interpret the results that you see, the temptation for the average person to view machine learning systems as human-like is irresistible. But they aren't. Consider how machines and people learn. You can teach a computer to recognize cats by showing it 1 million images. Or you can simply point one out to a 3-year-old and get the same job done. That's a cat. It's a cat. That's it, done. Obviously, humans and machines do not learn the same way. So let's take a closer look at so-called machine intelligence. It's true that machines perform an increasingly diverse array of tasks that people perform by applying their native intelligence. But does that mean the machines are smart? Well, let's look at how we might measure supposed machine intelligence. Now, I pulled this image off the internet. We can start by looking at how we measure human intelligence. One common method is with IQ tests. But even for humans, this is a deeply flawed concept. Now, we love to measure and rank things with numbers, but let's face it, reducing human intelligence to a flat linear scale, it's highly questionable at the very least. What do we say? Little Sally did 2 more arithmetic problems than Johnny did in the time allotted, so her IQ is 7 points higher than his. Bull. It's just crazy. This is not to say that some people aren't smarter than others, only that simple linear numerical measures provide an inappropriate patina of objectivity and precision. In fact, IQ means intelligent quotient. It's the ratio of what you can accomplish over divided by your age. That's what it means. So the story gets worse. What psychologists actually say is that IQ doesn't measure intelligence at all, simply what they call developmental competence. So that's why it's calculated as a function of your age. Beyond childhood, it's basically meaningless. Now, as psychologists are fond of pointing out, there are many different kinds of intelligence. There's social, emotional, there's analytic, there's athletic, there's musical, etc. So what does it mean to say that Mozart and Einstein have the same IQ? My view is not much. More to the point, it's even less meaningful to talk about machines having an IQ. Suppose we give the same IQ test to a machine that we administer to humans. Wow, it only took 1 millisecond to accurately complete the same sums that took Sally and Johnny an hour. The machine must be super smart. It's an IQ of 1 million. Of course not. This is complete nonsense. In fact, a little bit of history. As you may know, calculating used to be the province of highly trained specialists, and they were known as calculators. That was the name of a profession. And the profession required considerable intelligence and attention to detail and skill. And now this function is performed by tools that are so inexpensive, they're given away as promotional trinkets at trade shows. Now, you're probably wondering how I'm going to fit this slide into my talk. We'll find out. Get that keyboard back here. The truth is that intelligence isn't an objective, well-defined, measurable attribute like mass or blood pressure. It's a subjective, culturally influenced concept, more like beauty. Who's more attractive, Angelina Jolie or January Jones? Is the answer the same in Nairobi or in Karachi? Can one say that one is 6.5% more attractive than the other? Of course not. Now, some of you may have heard the term superintelligence. Anybody pick up the book by Nick Bostrom? Nobody? I got one. Oh, he doesn't want to admit it. Okay. It's not pornography. You can, It's pretty close. Okay. It's intellectual pornography. That's right. A lot of truth to that. Now, you might have heard the term superintelligence. This is an idea that's being batted around now. It was recently popularized in a very lengthy tome. I made it all the way through. How far did you get? By Oxford University professor Nick Bostrom. Very smart guy. But let's apply my observation about beauty to the superintelligence debate. Now, as anyone can see from the movies, female robots are getting more attractive and capable all the time. If I were to subscribe to such a concept, I could write a scholarly tome about how robots are becoming more beautiful. And perhaps we call it, I don't know, super attractiveness or something. I could conclude that this is an existential threat to humanity. Because when female robots begin to exceed human attractiveness, men will only desire to mate with them instead of with other people, disrupting our natural reproductive process. That's a parody of the argument in superintelligence. So here's a news flash for you. There is no such thing as a female or a male robot, despite what the average moviegoer is encouraged to believe. Just like there's no such thing as a generally intelligent robot. This is a comparable slice of fiction. We may all wish to create such a thing, but a sober look at the results so far don't suggest that we're on the path to that at all. It's a little bit like climbing a tree and claiming you're making progress on getting to the moon. Now, by the superintelligence logic, the machines took over long ago, whether they were smart or not. They move our freight, they score our tests, explore the cosmos, handle our billing. They plant and pick most of our crops. They trade stocks, they store and retrieve documents. They manufacture just about everything, including themselves, sometimes with human help, and sometimes without human intervention. Now, all of these are tasks that not long ago would be regarded as requiring human effort and intelligence. Oh my God, the robots can outperform us. Is this a threat? Of course not. It's the whole point of automation. Factories are automated because machines can do the job of skilled laborers, and they can do it better and they can do it cheaper. We use computers to store and organize information because it's far better than relying on file clerks and paper documents. ATMs are faster and more accurate than bank tellers. Painting natural-looking hair used to be a skill that was honed through years of practice and apprenticeship by our most talented artists. Yet today, no one blinks when Disney uses CGI rendering to animate Rapunzel's flowing hair. Incidentally, I gave a talk at South by Southwest about a week or two ago, and I used this example. A guy came up afterwards, and he said to me, "That's so weird. I'm the guy who animated Rapunzel's hair." So I'm actually probably going to go down to LA and talk to him. So I thought that was cool. Anyway, this list goes on and on. If we can program machines to read x-rays, to write news stories, to drive delivery trucks, and to draft contracts, my view is all the better. I say good riddance to those jobs. Get some other job. So my point is simple. Lots of problems that we think require intelligence to solve actually don't. There are other ways to solve them, and that's what we're using machines to do. This is all about automation. It's not about intelligence. So now that I've given you a new way to think about AI, let's talk about the implications of this new and different perspective. It's certainly true that AI is going to have a serious impact on labor markets and employment, but perhaps not the way most people expect. If you think of machines as becoming ever more intelligent and threatening our livelihoods, the obvious solution is to prevent them from getting smarter and to lock our doors and to aim ourselves with tasers. That should work on a robot. Well, the robots are coming, but not exactly for our jobs. Machines and computers don't perform jobs. They automate tasks. And except in extreme cases, you don't roll in a robot and show an employee to the door. Instead, the new technology hollows out and changes the jobs that people perform. If you think about it, even experts spend most of their time doing mundane, repetitive tasks like reviewing lab test results or drafting simple contracts or writing straightforward press releases, filling out paperwork and forms. You know, on the blue-collar side, you've got lots of workers who lay bricks and paint houses and mow lawns and drive trucks and pack boxes and take blood samples and fight fires and deliver mail and direct traffic. And many of these intellectual and physical tasks require straightforward logic or simple hand-eye coordination. And new technologies, mainly driven by advances in artificial intelligence, are poised to automate a great many of these kinds of tasks. Now, if your job involves a narrow and well-defined set of duties, and many do, then indeed your employment is at risk. If you have a broader set of responsibilities, or if your job requires a human touch, such as expressing sympathy or providing companionship, I don't think you have much to worry about. Now check out this comparison of job duties between licensed practical nurses and bricklayers. I got this right off the Bureau of Labor Statistics site. They've got a fabulous layout. If you want to find another job, you can figure out what you'll be paid and requirements and all that. It's really cool. I don't know why people don't use that more. Now, which of these two do you think is at more risk from automation? Somebody said the nurse. Am I taking questions? It's okay? You can wait, okay. I highlighted two here that I thought really explain how this is resistant to automation. Ensuring patients and their families understand release instructions. I don't see a robot doing that. Or providing emotional support. Nobody wants to get that from a robot. But most jobs really involve a mix of both general capabilities and specific skills. And as machines can perform the more routine activities, the plain fact is that fewer people are needed to get the same jobs done. So one person's productivity enhancing tool is another person's pink slip, or more likely, a job opening that no longer needs to be filled in the future. You hear a lot of debate about, well, are we enhancing and helping people be more productive, or are we putting them out of work? It's the same thing. Now, automation, whether it's driven by artificial intelligence or not, also changes the skills necessary to perform the work. If an oncologist no longer needs to read MRIs, or an accountant operates a computer program instead of doing calculations, then different aptitudes and talents and training might be required. So the resulting loss of jobs is what economists call structural unemployment. It's the mismatch of the skills of the workers to the needs of the employers. So the more pressing problem posed by AI for workers is not so much the lack of jobs, but the way new technology transforms the nature of work and therefore the training and skills that are required to perform those jobs. Now, historically, as automation has eliminated the need for workers, the resulting increase in wealth has eventually generated new kinds of jobs that pick up the slack. And I see no reason why this pattern won't continue. But the key word here is eventually. Now, some cool historical facts. 200 years ago, more than 90% of the US population worked in agriculture. Basically, that's all anyone did as we grew and prepared food. Now today, less than 2% of our population is required to feed everybody. Oh my God, is everybody out of work? Of course not. We've had plenty of time to adapt. And as our standard of living has relentlessly increased, new opportunities have arisen for people to fill the ever-expanding expectations of our ever richer society. So the question I always get asked is, well, what will people do? You've probably seen all these things. When in 20 or 30 years, 50% of the jobs will go away. Well, there'll be another 50%, believe me. What are those jobs? The jobs are going to be those that inherently involve a personal touch or a demonstration of skill, like playing the piano, or some kind of person-to-person interaction. Now, I do not see why we can't be a society of competitive gamers and of artisans selling our stuff on Etsy, or personal shoppers, or flower arrangers, or tennis pros, or party planners, and no doubt a lot of other things that really don't even exist yet. You know, nobody wants to go to a robotic undertaker who's going to go, "I am so sorry for your loss." That's not going to happen. So that's the good news. But the bad news is it takes time for these transitions to happen. And a new wave of AI-enabled applications is likely to accelerate the normal cycle of job destruction and job creation. So we need to find new ways to retrain the disenfranchised and displaced workers. Now, one solution that I discuss in my book, available in bookstores everywhere, also on your seats here. One solution that I suggest is the idea of a job mortgage. Now, basically, people should be able to learn new skills by borrowing against their future earnings capacity. Now, today in the US, vocational training, I'll keep my language clean, is really messed up. It's mainly because the government is the lender of first resort for student loans, and the skills that people learn are disconnected from the needs of the marketplace. We're not investing in education. We're handing out money to people to learn things that won't help them do things to allow them to pay it back. If you can't get a job, too bad, your student loans still due. How many of you guys have student loans still outstanding? 3 or 4, okay. Now, what we need to do is to create new kinds of financial instruments that tie the deployment of capital to the return on the investment, just as we do with home mortgages or loans to businesses. We can use the discipline of the marketplace to help us productively repurpose displaced workers. And this will benefit not only those who find their skills obsoleted, but it's going to benefit society in general. Now, finally, there's another dark cloud related to advances in AI. While it's true that automation makes society richer, there are serious questions about just whose pockets are filled by the increased wealth. You know, right here in the Valley, we in the high tech tend to believe that we're developing dazzling technologies for a needy and grateful world. And indeed, we've made tremendous progress on raising the standard of living of the very poorest people in the world, around the world. But for the developed world, the news is not so good. Up until about 1970, on and off, we found ways to distribute at least some of the economic benefits of the increased productivity broadly across society. And that supported the rise of the mythical middle class. But it doesn't take much to see that those days are over. As economists know, automation is the substitution of capital for labor. And I'm here to tell you, Karl Marx was right. The struggle between capital and labor is a losing proposition for workers. Some of my friends call me like a neo-Marxist, post-capitalist. What that means is that the benefits of automation naturally accrue to those who can invest in these new systems. And why not? People are working harder, and they aren't any smarter than they used to be. In fact, working hours have decreased slowly but consistently for the last 100 years. The reason we can now do more with less is that business owners invest some of their capital into process and productivity improvements. And of course, in our capitalist economy, they reap the rewards of that investment. So what's all this got to do with AI? The technologies that are on the drawing boards right here in our labs are quickening the hearts of entrepreneurs and investors everywhere, as you, of course, are well aware. And they are the ones who stand to benefit, while they export more and more of the risks to the rest of society. Workers are less secure, wages stagnate, pension funds can go bust. You know, we're raising a generation of contractors for the gig economy, whose variable working hours and health benefits are their own problem. Now, some people have the mistaken impression that the free market will address these problems. If only we get the government out of the way. Have any Republicans here? But I'm here to tell you that our economy is hardly an example of unfettered capitalism. In fact, there are all sorts of rules and policies that drive where the capital goes, how it is deployed, and who gets the returns. The problem is that our economic and regulatory policies have become decoupled from our social goals. And we have to fix that. But how? The good news, people tend to think of this statically. We need to think of it dynamically. The economy is not static. It doubles about every 40 years. And it's done that here in the US pretty reliably since the start of the Industrial Revolution in the 1700s. Now, in 1800, the average household income in the US in inflation-adjusted dollars was $1,000 a year. That's about the same as it is today in Malawi and Mozambique. And it's probably not coincidentally, their economies look surprisingly similar to what it was in the US about 200 years ago. Now, but I doubt that in Ben Franklin's time, people thought of themselves as dirt poor, barely scratching out an existence. You know, what you see on Downton Abbey, that was just the tiniest little sliver of society. Everybody else was trying to scratch out food from the earth. So, what does this mean today? It means that 40 years from now, most likely there will literally be twice as much wealth in the US and similar places to go around. So the challenge for us is to implement policies that are going to encourage that wealth to be more broadly distributed. We don't have to steal from the rich and give to the poor. You know, we need to provide incentives for entrepreneurs and businesses to find ways to benefit ever larger swaths of society. Those are policy issues. So in my book, available in bookstores everywhere, on the seat in front of you, I give examples of the kind of thinking I think that we need. For instance, this is very brief, it's just a headline on it, but I suggest that we make corporate taxes progressive based on how broadly distributed the company's equity is. So the more stockholders that a company has, suitably defined, the lower their tax rate would be. Microsoft, one of the most widely held corporations, should pay a lower tax than Bechtel. Bechtel, you may not even know of. It's a very large company which is privately held. I believe they're headquartered here in San Francisco. Now, if we do this, what will happen is they'll figure out ways to distribute the equity more broadly. We need to move to an asset-based society from a labor-based society, and we can do it through policies. So progressive policies like this can promote our social goals without stifling economic growth. We just have to get on with it and stop believing the myth that unfettered capitalism is the answer to the world's problems. Okay, let me wrap things up so we'll have time for some questions. In fact, if you want to line up at the mic, I'll take them in a minute. Let me recap. I don't want you guys to think that I'm anti-AI. Nothing could be further from the truth. I think its potential on the impact on the world is similar, and I'm not exaggerating, to the invention of the wheel. But we need to think of it not as some sort of magical discontinuity in the development of intelligent life on Earth, but rather as a powerful collection of automation tools with the potential to transform our livelihoods and to vastly increase our wealth. The challenge we face is that our existing institutions, without some enlightened rethinking, run a serious risk of making a mess out of this opportunity. I'm supremely confident that our future is very bright, more Star Trek than Terminator. But the transition might be protracted and brutal unless we pay attention to the issues that I've raised today. We have to find new and better ways to ensure that our economy doesn't motor on, going faster and faster, while throwing ever more people overboard. You know, our technology and our economy should serve us, not the other way around. So let me stop there, and can I just start to take questions? There you go. Thank you.
Jerry, thank you so much. You know, it's kind of unfortunate your first question is actually coming from The Economist.
Okay.
I enjoyed your talk a lot, and obviously, I think lots of important issues here. One of the challenges I see about implementing, let's call it a system that generates more equitable outcomes from technological change is that as economic inequality increases, you also see, let's call it the democratic consensus in a lot of Western countries and other economies also starts to fray. People's economic interests start to separate when there's, you know, on the one end, somebody very wealthy that, you know, benefits on the current system and somebody who is very poor that in some sense has absolutely no stake in the current system. You know, how can we and this generates more of a political hurdle for the kind of policies that you talk about. I mean, in the United States, to generate any sort of safety net for the first time, we needed the cataclysm of the Great Depression. It took something like 80 or 100 years for some limited form of universal health care to take place in this country. How can we overcome these political hurdles when they become bigger and bigger the longer this process goes on?
Well, you're hitting on exactly, I think, the right issue. Now, historically, and in a lot of places that are not as similar to the U.S. as they might be, the answer is very simple. You have a revolution. And, you know, it's a new government, and they redistribute the assets, and they take everything away. And it just kind of stirs up the pot, hoping that it won't come to a boil, and then the same problems tend to recur again as the new entrenched dictators begin assemble their kleptocracy, I think is the term. Fortunately, I am kind of a believer in democracy. The wisdom of crowds. And we have a built-in mechanism for revolution, which is throw the bastards out and elect new ones. Now, what's happened here, this is my point of view, is we have permitted money to corrupt the democratic process in a very serious way. I'm not kidding about this. Can anybody here guess who's coming to my house tomorrow in Hillsborough? Not Bernie, but you're close. Hillary Clinton. Now, why is she there? Oh man, this is being broadcast. I have to be a little careful. She's coming to talk to a small group of people who can pony up a lot of money to help her win the election. Now, the irony is, of course, I'm hosting this and doing this, putting up money, because I want to get the money out of politics. And I think that she has a real opportunity to do that. The truth is that there's this incredible sort of public lie, in my view, where people think that the free market is going to fix everything, and if we just let the rich people get richer, somehow that's going to benefit all of society. But I'm here to tell you that's not the case. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur from Silicon Valley. I know Reid Hoffman, founder of LinkedIn. He was on my board of directors at one of my companies. And he's a great guy. But the truth is, you don't need to compensate people the way he got compensated, and I'm not in that class, let me just be clear. But you know, you do the same thing for a fraction of the economic return, and that's a matter of policy. So the real answer is we're already seeing this revolution take place. You got Bernie over here, this is stage left, right? If I got that? And you've got Donald Trump over here on the right. And the one common element is they are not beholden to the current entrenched moneyed interests. That's what they share in common. And their surprising strength, I think, quite possibly comes from that very simple fact. People are revolting against an entrenched elite. So all we got to do is reduce the influence of that elite in the elections. And I think that this will be a self-correcting problem. We'll begin to get policies that really do change our economic system, that rein in the excesses of the financial industry in particular, which takes, you're the economist, 30% of the rents in the US. The rents is a technical term. That's ridiculous. In order for what? To grease the wheels of commerce? That's just crazy. if you want to get rich today, go to business school and go join an investment bank. So the point is, I think we have a mechanism in place, and we're seeing it move very much like it did just before FDR was elected. We're missing right now a real FDR figure. He took the long view, and I don't think that necessarily the people that we're electing today have that same long view about the things which are really going to benefit not us, but our grandchildren. But I think it's Star Trek versus Terminator. I think we can get there. We have the basic mechanisms. We just have to let them operate. And people have to wake up to think that electing some billionaire to Washington who has strong self-interest is somehow going to benefit the starving people in Kentucky or something like that. Yeah, that's my answer. Next, yes, sir.
Hi, thanks so much, Jerry, for coming and chatting with us.
Thank you.
You started off by talking about how machines right now are not intelligent, and this is not really a thing we have to worry about, because that's not the direction that we've seen from history. It seems like a pretty simple counterexample to talk about a computer program that just simulates a human brain, and it seems hard to argue that that would not be intelligent. And if we've got a simulated human brain, it seems pretty easy to say, well, we can muck with the code, make it bigger, make it smarter. And all of a sudden, we're talking about something much more akin to what Nick Bostrom seems worried about, of superintelligence, whose default thing will be to kill all the people. Why are you not worried about this?
Well, for several reasons. But let me firstly say that your point is a good one. I don't disagree necessarily with what you say. The only person that I know of who is taking that point of view seriously is Jeff Hawkins at Numenta. The guy who did the Palm Pilot. Anybody remember? You're all too young. He's really looking at brain simulation. And it is conceivable that an approach based on that will produce a computer program that is much more capable or much more general and adaptable. But where you got to draw the line is it's not going to be what a human is. It didn't occur through millions of years of evolution. It doesn't have an emotional component. It doesn't have to operate in a body per se. And there's a big difference between simulating that and duplicating it. That's the concept that John Searle, some of you may know his argument about the Chinese room. Searle talks about the difference between simulation and duplication. So like we can simulate, we may be able to simulate the neural activity of a nematode, if I got the right thing. But that's not the same thing as having a nematode. And the fact that you say, well, it looks like it's hungry because these patterns occur in the computer program. It's a simulation. I don't think there's any real justification right now for saying that it feels hunger, that the program feels hunger. So it's quite possible that we'll build much more general and much more valuable machines in the future, but they're not going to kind of wake up and come alive. There's no reason to believe they're going to be conscious in the human sense or that they will have free will. They may be very good tools for doing a wide variety of different kinds of jobs, but they're not going to take the kind of jobs that I was talking about. Nobody wants to go to to pull up an example here. If your job involves persuading other people through forming some kind of symbiotic human connection, emotional connection, maybe you can do that with a machine, but you're faking it. And I don't think that's you're not going to want to date a robot, I hope. Although I think I've done that on occasion in my
Your distinction between simulation and reproduction seems really close to what we see today, where if you write a chat bot that can respond to a greeting, it can respond back.
Yes.
It's simulating the behaviors.
Correct.
But if you're simulating everything that's underneath, if you're reproducing all of the neurons and all of the behaviors of the physical structure that creates a person, it's really hard to argue that that's not going to have intelligence, that won't be able to create a persuasive argument.
Well, I think it'll create a persuasive argument. The question is, what does it mean? At the core of this, if you really dig down and kind of look in your heart on this, the issue is not that it can't simulate or behave exactly like a human being, theoretically. And we're nowhere near. I mean, that's part of, let me pause there for a second. Part of my point is, okay, it's a great idea. Nothing I see suggests that we're on the path to that. And I've been 30 years in this. I've been through my grieving process as an AI guy. Everybody in AI wants to believe, we're on a quest. But it's like alchemy in the Middle Ages. It's like, okay, we're going to turn lead into gold. Now, it's not that a lot of good chemistry didn't get done. It just, that wasn't the way it was going to happen. So there ought to be some evidence other than movies, that make this look real. I'm not saying it can't possibly happen at some point in the future, but we also might be worried about whether the aliens are going to land. That's, that can really happen. It's an odd thing, but what are we going to do when the aliens land? Should we worry about that? I don't think so. I don't think we need to worry about these kinds of super intelligent machines. And I got off track and I didn't answer your question. It raises all kinds of very serious issues. Suppose you crank up the clock speed on this device. Well, now it's not really interacting with the world in the same way. What happens? Is it now 100 years old, 200 years old? And there's, I'll get a little technical here. Intelligence of the sort that you're talking about may be asymptotic, not linear or superlinear. So, okay, like Google may get incredibly smart over the next 20 years in this sense, even if they simulate it as a giant brain. And I don't think that's the right approach anyway. But it may get very smart, but at the end of the day, it's answering your search queries. And it just does a really good job at that. It's not going to be drinking your wine and stealing your wife and doing other things that we worry about. So my point is that at the core of this argument is the question of whether these objects, whatever they are, deserve the courtesy of our empathy. Do they have some sense of rights? Are they, in that sense, even if they're simulated, human? And I think what we mean is, well, does that mean I shouldn't unplug it or turn it off? Am I doing something cruel? And that's really at the core of this. And I think we need, in the scientific community, to have a debate that's probably going to take 50 or 100 years to come to some kind of conclusion as to whether we have a moral obligation to intelligent devices if something like that occurs, or whether we do not. It may be the case 100 years from now that to call yourself a humanist would be like calling yourself a racist. Or it may be the opposite. I think it will be the opposite. I think machines are great. Roll one in and set it loose, and my God, it gave me great advice on how to run my life. And terrific. Okay, we're done. Turn it off.
Thanks so much.
Sorry. Went on a little long, but I'm passionate about these issues, which machines are not. Yeah.
Hey, so you mentioned a few tasks that have fallen to AI: chess, driving, Go. But I wonder if you're at risk of the sort of no true Scotsman fallacy. Like, as a task falls to AI, you say, well, that didn't really require intelligence anyway. So my question is, what is a task that does require intelligence? Or to put it another way, what will be the last task to fall to machines? And not just in the sense of like human contact, but in terms of the thinking required.
I really don't have an answer to that because I hadn't thought about that. And it's not like there's a fixed set of tasks. If those of you who are working in machine learning, you understand you're extracting patterns out of very large collections of data. What we're seeing today is now we have very large collections of data, and we can extract patterns of extreme crystalline structure, of tremendous subtlety. And when you apply that information to certain classes of problems like playing Go, it does something that you thought only could be done with intelligence. Well, I don't really know what intelligence is, so I have trouble answering this question. My point is just that transactional activities, which are goal-directed, that have a well-defined success or failure, and that typically have a limited scope of actions that can take place. Those are the tasks that, at least with current generations of machines, are going to get done. I don't think we're going to be that interested in developing machines that can compose symphonies. Now, maybe I can think of some circumstances where that might be wrong, but we're not going to be interested in watching driverless cars go around a racetrack and see who can win. It'd be fun once, but it's not really what this is about. And like the Go match, to me, it's a race between a horse and a train. It's a human and let's see if you can remember more digits than this computer over here. I'm not really concerned about it. But there's any task that can be codified in that way that I just described, I think has the possibility of being automated. and perhaps with some very general techniques, but I don't think we should mistake that for thinking, oh my God, that's a sentient being. Even though when you pinch it, it goes, ouch. You know, it's fake. It doesn't really, anyway. Thank you. One more question?
Yep. We have the final question from the stream. In your book, it seems you draw very different conclusions than Martin Ford. And what does he get wrong in his book, Rise of the Robots?
Okay. That's true. My point of view, with respect to Martin, who's a great guy, is that he's thinking about this problem statically. If you think that it's really a failure to understand how job markets really operate, which economists are much better at understanding. Yes, it's true that we'll be able to accomplish 80, maybe 80, 90% in 50 years or 100 years of the tasks that we do today will be accomplishable by machine. But you look at the history, that's always been the case. And the likelihood is that we'll have, first of all, have greatly increased wealth. And as a result of that, people will want to pay people to do things that they didn't do, we aren't interested in today. I've got a bunch of examples of this, but I cut my talk short. I have 4 daughters. When they get married, they're going to want wedding dresses, probably. Now, it may be the case that in 50 years, it would be embarrassing to have a wedding dress that wasn't custom designed by a human being for your wedding. Today, that's a great extravagance. It might not be. You know, people are just plain going to have more money, and they're going to be willing to pay us to do things, other people to do things that they're not going to do today. So the history of automation is one of job creation, not one of job destruction. It's more creation than destruction. And as I tried to point out, 90 years ago, if somebody from 90 years, I'm sorry, I got that back, 200 years ago, when 90% of us did agriculture, if we took one of those people and brought him here today, he'd think we all went crazy. Say, well, you guys are nuts. You should work 2 hours a week at McDonald's, go out in the woods, build yourself a shack, dig a hole for an outhouse, and live a life of leisure. You know, why do you have to do all this crazy stuff? You guys aren't working. That would really be their point of view. You guys aren't working. You're just engaged in this weird thing with computers and stuff, and that's not work. Well, when we look forward, we tend to have the same reaction to my examples. It's like, well, that's not work when you're a competitive gamer. Well, it might be in the future. So, I think Martin is right that we're on the edge of a revolution because the new techniques in AI are going to be much more broadly applicable across a wide range of intellectual and physical tasks. But that does not mean that there will be no work. There'll be plenty of work and a lot of money to pay for it. So that's my point of disagreement with Martin. And now I'm 1 minute late, and she made me promise.
Great. No, thank you so much. A round of applause for Jerry.
Thank you.